2020 CrossFit Games season has been unlike any other in the history of the sport. A competitive year that started with the Open way back in October of 2019 will finally come to a close more than a year later in the birthplace of the sport itself. 5 women are all that remain, and they'll battle it out amongst the dusty hills of Aromas for the title of fittest woman on earth. 3 times Carrie Pierce has been the top American woman at the CrossFit Games, but after securing her spot in the Final 5 in 2020, she's got her eyes set on ending a 6-year podium drought for the American women at the Games. Pierce flipped the switch when things turned upside down in Stage 1, notching top 5 finishes in both Bam Diane and the handstand hold to battle her way into Stage 2 and bring herself one step closer to the one thing that's eluded her, a CrossFit Games medal. After 3 events, things were looking grim for 2-time champion Katrin Davidsdottir, but the woman nicknamed the Sled Dog put her championship pedigree on full display in Day 2 as she came charging out of the gates with back-to-back event wins in Nasty Nancy and the Max Handstand Hold to catapult herself back into the top 5 for good. The only woman remaining in the field who has beaten Tia-Clair Toomey in live CrossFit competition has secured a top 5 finish at the Games for a 6th consecutive year, with her sights set on a potential 4th career CrossFit Games podium. 1 year ago, Haley Adams made history as the youngest woman ever to crack the top 10 at the Games at just 18 years old. This season, the young phenom secured her shot at yet another record by finishing 5 of the 7 Stage 1 events in 6th place or better, including 3 consecutive 4th place finishes to end the weekend. A podium finish in October would mean an end to the American women's podium drought, and Adams breaking a decade-long record held by Annie Thorisdottir for the youngest podium finisher in CrossFit Games history. Brooke Wells' Redemption Tour booked a week-long stopover in Aromas this year after a heartbreaking 2019 saw Wells get cut from the competition after a costly foot fault penalty in the sprint. In Stage 1, Wells had a near flawless run through 7 events as the only woman to finish every test inside the top 10. With a career best finish at the Games already in hand, Wells will look to pick up where she left off at the ranch in 2016, when she won the deadlift ladder and took 2nd in the ranch mini chipper in hopes of securing her first career CrossFit Games podium. The woman standing in all of their ways is the 3-time reigning fittest woman on earth, Tia-Clair Toomey, who will look to build on her already historic run at the top with a 4th consecutive CrossFit Games title and a 6th consecutive podium at the Games, which would move her solely into first place all time for the women for the most podiums ever in CrossFit Games history. In Stage 1, Toomey opened with 3 straight event wins and added a 4th in the Awful Annie finale to give herself the overall win and keep things firing on all cylinders heading into Stage 2. We're almost to the finish line for the 2020 season. Stage 2 action kicks off Monday, October 19th, as the 2020 Reebok CrossFit Games return to the ranch in Aromas to crown the fittest woman on earth.
Welcome back again to a special edition of The Bottom Line, where we are looking ahead to the final 5 females who will soon be converging upon Aromas for Phase 2 of the 2020 CrossFit Games. Tommy Marquez and Justin LoFranco are here. How's it going, guys?
Gonna be better.
Just back from a weekend of not taking care of myself and somehow cleaned 290 at the end of an EMOM today. So body is amazing thing.
Well, as they say, Tommy, weight, mass moves mass. So, an extra 10 pounds from a long weekend is certainly a good way to set yourself up for a Monday.
10, I'm rocking an extra 15. It was a heavy weekend.
Wow.
Well, I got the COVID 25, so I guess we're in the same boat.
Impressive, guys. Well, look, we have just taken a look back at the women's side of the competition performance over Phase 1, and now we are looking ahead to what the final 5 might end up doing in Phase 2. What are your kind of like overall predictions as far as performance goes?
I guess I'll dive in here first. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm kind of predicting Tia Claire Toomey, outside of a fluke, takes another lap around the stadium here, and further cements herself as the greatest of all time on the female side. I mean, I think she's already got that title, and I think she's going to extend that title even further. Honestly, it's just she's just so dominant. It's clear that her time spent with Matthew Frazier has really rubbed off. Their training mentality is very similar. They train by themselves. They are pushing each other extremely hard. You know, I don't know. Statistically speaking, look, it just doesn't look all that good. You know, Tommy and I, we talked about this in the recap, you know, from the stage one of competition. I mean, and we remodeled the leaderboard with just the top 5 athletes, and she goes on to extend her lead by you know, to 100 points within the top 5, and she notches up 4 wins out of 7 events in the stage one competition events. So look, same thing with the guys as it is with the girls. You've got to win, and if you can win, then maybe you can create a little bit of separation between Toomey and the rest of the field. But if you can't, then sorry, just going to be a repeat.
Yeah, well, I think we're at the point now where, like, you know, the conversation starts with Tia at the top, and then how do we fill underneath? In the very least, she's earned that right, and she's done consistently so across basically every competition format outside of the Open, which for her is more of a, you know, less of a focus for her, I would say. So the big question really becomes who fills at the podium. Who is the American woman or women that will make the podium to end the drought? And then what is the kind of fray behind Tia as she just kind of leaves destruction in her wake look like, and how do the remaining 4 women kind of make heads or tails of that? And I think there's a couple of, I mean, I think that this collection of women, you know, Katrin, Kari Pierce, Brooke Wells, and Haley Adams are very interesting in that they all kind of excel at slightly different things, but they all have a handful of weaknesses here or there that would maybe for the most part save Katrin, prevent you from being like, oh yeah, 100% second place for them. They have that one thing that you're like, okay, that's maybe a little bit more programming dependent that prevents you from giving the, you know, the lead pipe lock of the century stamp of approval on them getting. And so I think that's where we're going to have to see some of the competition leaks and workout leaks that Dave and some of the teams like to do a couple weeks before to start to paint our view a little bit. I will say that you look at some of the stuff that you know is going to happen at the ranch. Some of the we've seen some testing photos of people swimming. We've seen some testing photos of people sprinting and running the hills. Yeah. That to me, that's something that right away you're like, oh, Haley Adams, that she is going to love that stuff. Rich echoed some similar sentiments when I spoke with him last week when he said, we're just excited for Haley to actually show what she's good at. And that's the scary part, is that we just stuck to the inside the gym stuff. And you know that Mayhem, they get outside, they train a ton, they have access to water, they have access to those lovely Tennessee hills that they can go and run out all the time between, you know, Senior's barn and Rich's property. And I think we're going to start to see like Haley really start to shine with some of these events where maybe similar to stage one, where she can maybe make up for the fact that she has her weakness being the 1 rep max, 2 rep max, 3 rep max type barbell stuff, because fortunate for her, someone like Katrin and someone like Kari Pierce have those same weaknesses. So she'll be able to make some hay and not have to worry about necessarily her weaknesses punishing her as much with some similar athletes like that. So I think one of the things that's really intriguing is this is a great opportunity for Haley to maybe jump up and see second if she wants. And I can see her finishing as high as second and taking the top spot for the American women. It just depends on what other stuff are we going to get to chew on outside of the longer outside of the box ranch programming that we're used to.
I know, Justin, were you trying to jump in there? Do you have an additional point?
Yeah. You know, I think, again, I go back to what we talked about in the men, and I'm going to say winning matters in this new scoring format, especially with 5 athletes. And, you know, Katrin Davidsdottir came in the reshuffled format that we modeled. She takes 3 event wins. Now, she doesn't get more points than Brooke because she kind of bombed a couple of workouts where she got too far down. But 3 event wins is huge. I mean, she catapulted herself up into the 3rd place position in a remodeled leaderboard. And you go, okay, that's 300 points. And the degree of separation now kind of begins to shuffle itself out. You know, she was only 45 points now behind Brooke Wells. And that's really not a lot in this new point format. That's kind of the difference between 1st and 3rd when you think about it. And you're like, wow, okay, that's not a lot. And so I think that every placement up on the leaderboard is really going to begin to matter here. So what I'm looking at here is who's coming in and winning. And you talked, Tommy, a little bit about some of these athletes that have certain specialties or certain areas where they're going to really excel at. And so I'm like, you know what? Shaking it up is going to require wins, and you're going to have to go for wins because, you know, look, outside of that, you're just not going to be able to make up the points. I mean, if you average a 2nd place finish, you're probably going to be either 1 or 2, for obvious reasons. But I'm looking for the old athletes that are going to win events. The only 2 athletes that win any events in the remodel leaderboard are Katrin and Tia. The only 2, and that's it really is going to matter, because if you don't knock up any wins, unless you have a straight 2nd place go at it, which would be what I would consider to be a near perfect finish, you know, your chances of getting up there on the podium are going to go down pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's what hurts Brooke a little bit in this format, is not being able to necessarily pile up event wins. She was extremely consistent against a larger field for people that can slot in, you know, 3-4 placements here or there. But without that broader swath of athletes, I don't know where she's going to pick up. People say like, yeah, she won the ranch deadlift ladder, but like, I'm pretty sure Tia Toomey was at or above her deadlift during CrossFit Total just a year prior. And Brooke has notably sacrificed some strength, some top end strength to gain those improvements in other areas. So you look at like, okay, you know, Carrie Pierce is something very high skill gymnastics, high rep gymnastics, you know, some of the top, upper echelon type stuff, ring muscle ups, you know, she even mentioned in an interview with me, ring handstand push-ups, you know, lots of chest to bars, pegboard stuff that we haven't seen. That's going to hurt Katrin. That's going to hurt Brooke Wells, that she'll maybe have to fight with Haley and Tia, but that already slices out a big portion of the population. Haley obviously loves the longer, more outside the better, coupled with some high skill gymnastics. She loves that kind of stuff. And then you look at Katrin, you look at stuff like the longer grinder type classic CrossFit workouts, maybe something that we would see similar to a Nasty Nancy, where she can kind of chew in and maybe capitalize on, hey, maybe Tia pulled off the throttle a little bit on this workout and I can push it and seize that opportunity, because it's going to be tough, because like I said, every single one has the weakness. I mentioned the 3 women with the strength. Brooke and Katrin notably haven't seen some of the upper body high skill pulling stuff that has typically really punished them in the past. The muscle ups, the pegboard, you know, even bar muscle ups to an extent, that you know is going to come up at some point because they just haven't shown up.
Yeah. Well, what's Tia's weakness when you go through all these?
Yeah, it's kind of that's the difficult, right? Like you look at like her 1,000-meter row, maybe like you let's start with stage 1, right? The 1,000-meter row, really the difference between, you know, she was 6th there and she was 0.7 behind 4th, and like the tight, like the tight margins don't really give credence to it really being a weakness. She loses to catch. Yeah, the handstand hold, but like, yeah, but the women were much better at the top echelon, but even then she's like 20 seconds from 8th. Like, you know, that's monostructural. Like,
well, she does come in last in a reshuffled leaderboard here. She does come in last.
True,
here,
true. And I think it's
we're
important.
not going to see a handstand hold at the ranch. So
though it is important to look at the monostructural events and how those have specifically been impacting the scores, because what we've done here is gotten to a top 5 that, at least to me, seems like incredibly well-rounded traditional CrossFit, which obviously was something that we talked a lot about last year, having a lot of those monostructural events before the cut for the top 5. So we've looked at programming in a way, and Dave Cascio has arranged programming in a way to make it incredibly CrossFit across the board. And now we've got some very well-rounded athletes moving into the top 5. But that's not to say, I mean, I'm sure that monostructural events are coming up. So how is that going to affect the scoring, reshuffle the scoring, change the way that they've kind of like come into this, now that we're going to find events that really allow people to separate?
Well, we'll take a look just take a look at some of the longer monostructural type games levels tests that we've seen at the games in the past. You have the sprint relay last year that had all the drama behind it. Tia was third. The only women that beat her, Kristen Holta, Carolyn Prevost, they're not around. In the ruck, she finishes second. The first person that in that one is Emily Rolfe, no one around. And you go back to 2018. Okay, yeah, we started with the crit. Let's see. Tia was fifth. Katrin did beat her in that one, but outside of that, it was Holta, Horvath, athletes that aren't around.
Right.
30 muscle-ups for time. She was second in that workout behind Christy Aramo by like a half second. I mean, marathon row, maybe she was 14th. Katrin beat her in fifth. You go down, she beat Carrie. She beat Brooke Wells. We're getting really close to some, and if you get any sort of like monostructural lift type stuff, we know how good she is with a barbell. It's like, we're really picking at straws here a little bit. So I would, if I were some of the women there, I'd be like, dang, why do we use up the handstand hold in stage one? Let's save it for something.
Bring it back.
Yeah. Where we can actually chew up some points on it. But,
Interesting. Yeah.
When looking at the ranch landscape and stuff, and we talked about this already, it was like, I'm hoping that Dave really busts out kind of the creativity level and kind of takes it back to a grittier, dirtier CrossFit Games that is testing the tip of the spear a little bit, and when we look at the games in past years, we say, well, we're setting a new standard for fitness every year. Like, this is meant to be tip of the spear at this stage, especially since we've cut it now from 30 athletes globally to 5 athletes that are going to be here and they're going to be testing these workouts. It's like, you look at the athletes in these imagery right now, and you look at like Saxon, you look at Christy and Nisler, they're pretty beat up. They're dirty. They're out there. They're getting their hands dirty and stuff. And I'd like to see a lot more of those components being built in here. And that's where things begin to kind of shift, because as you know this, it's like, remember Jason Kalipo's like the burden run, and he picks up this pig and it's like, oh, all of a sudden this apparatus is now completely new. And you see the guy coming in who has, basically caught up with all these athletes and surpassed them carrying this odd object, and then comes into this. And now it's a different ball game because this object is weird. It's different. It's not consistent. It's not what you see inside of the gym. And that's where the dynamics of, well, who comes to it and excels? Who's adaptable in the time frame, in this immediate time frame? Even if they do know the equipment, it's just how it's paired, etc. I'm like, that's where I get a little bit more excited, and that's where I go, yeah, you know what? I give Katrin a lot of kudos because she did win 3 straight events in this reshuffled leaderboard, and I'm like, okay, your propensity to win, your ability to turn it on when it is necessary, and that's something I look at. Katrin, it was necessary for her to win. She had like one choice, and she won 2 of those events outright in the competition, and then adds on another one when we reshuffle it for the top 5. And I go, you know what? 4 wins went to Tia, 3 wins went to Katrin. In my mind, I'm looking at that and saying, you know what? That's a very, very, very strong mental performance, and one when she needs it. And when you need it, you have to be able to win. And that's where I look at her and the difference between her and Brooke Wells. And I go, you know what? If you're going to only have 5 athletes, you're going to need to win some events. Your propensity and ability to win is going to be your propensity and your ability to get on the podium or even challenge Tia over time. And because this is a different format, it's a little dirtier, it's a little grittier, it's outside the gym. I give some hope here to the element of, you're not running on flat surfaces anymore. Yeah, things are different. Things are going to change, and that's the dynamic that I hope that the athletes bring here and that Dave incorporates for the programming, because I think that's going to be very exciting for the fans to watch.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of that with Katrin in Ringer 1 and Ringer 2 last year, right? When she had to come out and win 2 events in order to keep her podium hopes alive. Now, unfortunately, the standard things kind of fell apart with the muscle ups, like I mentioned, but she was able to kind of dial up a couple of event wins and really, put the pedal to the metal a little bit. But
nice one.
I was like, I wasn't sure if you guessed that, but I think it's worthwhile to note that, like, in my last interview with him, Dave said, 2019 was really tame. I didn't get to program anything that was new or exciting or that was, typical of CrossFit Games program. You could argue that the weirdest thing that Dave programmed all weekend long was toes to rings, because everybody was kind of like scratching their head at that one. When just a year prior, you have the crit, you have a marathon row, you have the battleground, you have the Madison Tripolis, you have chaos, You have the 2-stroke pull. You have all these events that are pulling out different movement patterns, the new and exciting things. One where you're literally learning on the fly, and you could see how Dave was really starting to dig into like the creativity aspect of the programming while still making it a valid test. And that all got shelved last year. And I think he was really, and like that was the sense I got from him in person. He was really excited and like licking his chops.
It's also only 5 athletes.
Yeah, and it's his
You can do a
backyard.
lot.
It's literally where he grew up. He grew up in a house that was, where we were sitting in the ranch in the shed, a pitching wedge away for all of my golf lovers out there. And so you could see it, like his gaze would kind of like casually drift off to the hill, just as I could see him just like, the flames in his eyes as he was just, cooking up some good stuff. So I think we'll get a lot of unique tests. And I think we'll get to see some of these athletes really add the exclamation mark behind the word athlete in terms of adapting and being able to, work and move in multiple.
Adaptability is the name of the game in the ranch. And you saw that in 16. Adaptability. You're like, and that's just going to be the case. One thing that, I never talked to any of the athletes here in the top 10. I just never really thought of it because I thought that was going to be, maybe perhaps the last time we saw that kind of format. Maybe it is that you'd cut down to 10. That's what we saw in 19. But I wonder how much it plays into account the fact that they can't get lower than 5th to take bigger risks now because you have a little bit of a safeguard in the sense you're not going to get 6th or 10th or 30th at this point. You're going to get 5th at the very worst. If you blow up, you can kind of ride the red line. And if you ride it just right, you're going to end up on top. If you're a little bit too hot, and you have to dial it back, then maybe you'll end up in 4th or 5th place. But I wonder how that security will play into their mindset as they go into the competition to take bigger risks. And we've seen a little less risk taking at the games. You see a lot more athletes conservatively approaching certain workouts, saying, "Well, it's not really my workout. I'm not gonna, go for it." Josh Bridges is the exact opposite. Back when we saw him in 18, he was just going absolutely hog wild in events that he knew he was good at. And he was going to go make people hurt to catch him. And I love that mentality. So that old guard mentality where an athlete was like, you know what, I'm just going to go out and win this one. I'm just going to win this one because I know I can and I'm going to make everybody else chase me. Josh was great at doing that. I wonder if we'll see a little bit more of that now that the security of not placing less than 5th is going to be out there on the athletes. So that's something I'm certainly looking at.
Yeah.
I think you'll definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you'll definitely see it from the 4th, 5th athletes. If we see the point spread start to separate into 2 groups, definitely see. Yeah, you'll start seeing some haymakers coming, from the back.
And that's exciting to me. That's the one thing that I've missed in the last several years about the games is less athletes in the bottom portions going, you know what, I'm just going to go on ahead and win one. You do see it, but it's less common. They're way more collected and conservative, and their approaches are playing the long game. The Matt Frazier style game. Sorry, not Rich, but Matt Frazier style game where he's like, I don't need a win. I'm just going to get 3s and 4s and 5s and 2s and occasionally a 1, and then I'll be up there 100 points ahead. I liked it back in the day when someone was just going to go, you know what, screw this. I'm fired up. I'm going to go take this one, and that was exciting to watch. And I hope to see a little bit more of that. I think the fans would love to see a little bit more of that, shaking it up, going for it, putting it all out there on the field and stuff. And perhaps there'll be a little more recovery time too, as this is a slightly different format, a little less waiting around. Maybe we'll see that, maybe not. But that's certainly my hope as a fan because, we're all fans of the sport at the end of the day, as much as we like to, talk about it.
Well, I'm going to call it 5-way tug of war. That's what I want to see. Old school.
Yeah. You have the ring in the middle and you have the ring towards
Yeah. Exactly. Oh yeah. Like Hunger Games style, as soon as over like a Shark Tank or something like that. This would keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Dave, if you're listening, you can have that idea, all yours. But no, obviously, you guys, it's just a few days away, so we can talk until we're blue in the face, and we probably will about what the standings will look like and what that performance will look like. But we are almost there, and I cannot wait to see what Dave comes up with, how these women, tackle it, and what the final standings are. It's going to be one of the most unique games we've ever had a chance to witness. So I'm very excited that it's happening.
You seem to be saying that a lot lately.
I know. It's very true. Very true. Guys, thank you so much for lending your opinions here. We will see everyone next time on The Bottom Line.